I wanted to tell everybody what he did to me, and it was his fault. And I played the victim and the blame game for a long time. And I realized that that wasn't going to help me get to where I needed to go. It was not going to get me to forgiveness.
And welcome to another episode of Carpe Diem Living, the podcast with your host, Shane Gitmed. And today we have a really, oh my gosh, you will learn a lot from Miss Natalie here. We were chatting a little bit before we started recording, and I just admire her strength and everything that she knows and what she teaches other women. So Natalie, tell us about, a little bit about you and how you got started within your holistic business.
Thanks, Shane. I'm so happy to be here with you guys today. Well, I want to say the school of hard knocks is probably how I ended up here. Did not think that this is where my life was going to lead. I had an experience. I've had several challenges in my life over my years, but the one that woke me up was when my husband left me for another woman, and I didn't know that he was unhappy. And it happened about, now it's going on about 10 years ago. And so I've been on this healing journey for about 10 years, just really looking how to heal my soul, because it was really devastating for me. I had a daughter at the time. Well, I have a daughter. She was 4 at the time. And it was just something that I didn't foresee coming. I had friends that knew and didn't tell me. And so it was a shock. It was definitely a traumatic experience. And it took me years really to overcome it. But one of the things that I didn't want to happen was I did not want my daughter to be a statistic of divorce, where she felt that there was going to be torn loyalty between me and her dad. And so I went on this mission to figure out how to forgive him. And forgiveness is a tough word. So ultimately, that is how I ended up on this journey. And I studied under many different spiritual master teachers. And I've developed what I call the Shift Your Vibe Transformation to Your Authentic Self program. And it's really about the journey. There is a roadmap that you can take to get over, your life challenge. And especially if that life challenge, it has to do with relationships, healing relationships, divorce. So that is what I'm here to help other women if they're interested, or they feel lost, or they have nowhere to go, or they're not sure how they're going to muster up that strength when sometimes you can't get off the couch. Whatever I can do to help.
Right. And, sometimes, just like you said, you didn't expect your life to be where it's at right now. But sometimes the things in our life, like big pivotal moments, do lead us to things we're meant to do, right? Like you didn't know that part of your life path was going to involve helping other women. And so clearly you're making an impact. You're showing other women that it's okay to go through these moments and through these chapters, but it's not the end. And there is strength and there is ways to heal. And even myself, I know that when my marriage ended, I wish I had known you during that time, because I could have definitely used someone that, could tell me that it's going to be okay and, guide you through that. Because immediately I was going through therapy, I was seeing a therapist, but something told me like, I need more. Like, it's like, okay, it's one thing to talk about it, but to talk to other women that can relate, that have been there, it's really hard. So after this had happened to you, so tell us a little bit kind of like the timeline. So your family had broken up, and then what steps did you take to help heal yourself?
So I think, one of the things is I didn't have friends that had gone through divorce before me. I was one of the first ones, I guess, that was going through it. Since then, many of my friends have gone through divorce, and I've been able to, unfortunately, help them. But for me, it's funny how the universe works. At the time, I was working for a company, and I had met a client that gave me a book called The Secret. It's a book about manifesting, the life you want and positive thinking. And, I read that book and then he left me, right? And so one of the first things that I did was I read lots of different self-help books. I picked all these different spiritual teachers and I read all these different self-help books because what was happening with me was I was depressed and I couldn't get off the couch. I was really struggling. I was going to a therapist, but I wasn't doing soulful healing work. I wasn't able to really get quiet. I couldn't turn my mind off. My mind kept going. I couldn't sleep. I was very stressed and it affected my health. One of the things that I started to do over time was to have an awareness consciously, a conscious awareness. And I talk about this in my ebook, but the first step is really to have a conscious awareness of your thoughts and the things that you're thinking and the things that you're saying. I hated my ex-husband at the time when he did this to me. I was very angry, would say lots of mean and hurtful and hateful things. And that we all need that outlet to vent. But when we continue to repeat that same story over and over and over again, we are essentially continuing to inflict that pain and bring that kind of negative energy into our life. And I had to look at myself. One of the things that I really had to look at was, what was I saying? What was I doing? What was I repeating was my story. I wanted to tell everybody what he did to me and it was his fault. And I played the victim and the blame game for a long time. And I realized that wasn't going to help me get to where I needed to go. It was not going to get me to forgiveness. When I had that conscious awareness, that realization that I really was in charge and I could sit there and complain and play the victim, but that wasn't going to get me to forgive him and it wasn't going to help my daughter. So that was really one of the first eye-opening things, that I had to look at what I was saying and what I was thinking and who I was talking to. We all have those friends that we want to call and vent to, those friends that you want to talk to, but those are the friends that you need somebody that's a little bit stronger that's going to say, you know what, I'm going to let you vent for 5 minutes and then we're going to have to shift this mindset of yours to something that you want. And we tend to talk about the things that we don't want instead of talking about the things that we do want. And that was me. And so from there, it was a matter of I started doing something and setting intentions during my day. I would get little note cards and I would say, I am intending to have a positive day and I intend to believe that I am worthy of love. And I started writing all these little intentions down on index cards, 3x5 index cards. And I would put them in my bathroom. I would write them on sticky notes. I would read them before bed every night. And I didn't believe what was on them. I did not believe what I had written on them. So it was like a challenge for me to try to force myself to look at what I wanted as opposed to what I didn't want. And I think we all do that from time to time. I think that's natural. But I think what really made a difference for me was that I was able to catch myself when I was playing the victim or playing the blame game and go, okay, you know what? I can't do that. I need to really keep my intention for what I wanted. It took practice, Shane. It took a lot of practice, and it's not something that I was able to forgive overnight. I also, at that time, was just continue to read these self-help books, and I got into meditation. One of the forms of meditation that I ended up practicing was something called sound healing, which is with crystal bowls, or they can do it with a gong. And that I found really, when I would go to these sound healings, you lay down on a yoga mat, you have a pillow, you get very comfortable. And if you're familiar with sound healing, it's about breaking up the stuck energy that exists around your body, if you believe in that. And I would start to feel better. So I started to become very interested in sound healing and meditation. That was so key to my healing, was meditation and finding the right meditation. And I talked to so many women and they're like, yeah, that doesn't work for me because my mind gets filled up. And it's okay if your mind gets filled up. And I think people sometimes have a misconception that meditation. You're a monk under a tree and you have to meditate for hours upon end. You can meditate. You can meditate for just a couple of minutes a day just to start out. But it's an approach that you have to take to really want to heal. And sometimes women aren't ready. Sometimes we're not ready to heal, and then we repeat the same pattern. So those are some of the initial things that I did. And I would find myself at times repeating a pattern, and I would say, oh my gosh, I'm doing this, or why am I doing this? Or why am I attracting another man in my life who is unfaithful? What is it in me that is not healed? And as we were talking about earlier, we're not meant to be perfect. And I always want to remind women that you are perfectly imperfect, and that is okay. And I think, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to want to please other people instead of really learning how to love ourselves. And that is something that, depending on how you were raised or how you were brought up, you may not have been taught those things. And it's something that is very important, because it's very difficult for someone else to love you if you don't love yourself. And that was one of the things on my journey that I had to do, was to learn to love myself and believe that I am worthy of love. I am worthy. That was a big one.
And, it's funny because people, it's almost become a thing where everyone's like, yeah, love yourself. Okay. But I feel like until they're ready to really accept that information and really apply it to their lives, then they start seeing the change. And yes. I love that you mentioned sound healing, because I actually had one session of that before through a colon hydrotherapist here in the Bay Area. And I remember, so when I first found her, I went there just because for my gut and digestive appointment. And I didn't realize that she was going to do a sound healing aspect of this. There was aromatherapy in there, and even a biometric scan. Have you done that before? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what was so that I was not emotionally prepared to what that appointment was going to be, because when I went there, I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to have this colon hydrotherapy. And then she's like, okay, we're also going to do the biometric scan. And this is where I truly understood like the energy that was essentially trapped in my bones and my muscles. And that's what and it was so eye-opening to me, because at this time I was still going to therapy and I'm thinking, okay, I'm healing. But in that scan, she saw grief, sadness, and all these things. And when she pulled that up for me, I instantly started crying. I instantly oh my gosh, it's almost like I feel like I'm being seen, things I don't talk about or stuck in my mind. It was on paper, it showed that my energy was showing grief. And at that time, like we say, it's a work in progress. It's a journey. That sound healing really did help me she did a gong as well. And it was so powerful. And I just remember thinking, wow, I could use this once a month.
Yeah.
Something like a maintenance thing that I need. Yeah. So how many times have you done sound healing throughout your journey?
Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit. So it's very interesting. So I went to a sound healer, and I had gone to maybe 2 or 3 sound healing sessions, and I ended up saying, I need to buy bowls. I went out and bought crystal bowls, and then I started to do sound healings in my home for my friends. I just felt called, Shane. It was like I said to the sound healer, where did you get those bowls? I went online. I need to do this. And I just started doing sound healings myself. I purchased a gong, and I was doing gong sound healings. And the interesting thing is that while I was doing this, it's interesting how the universe works, or your higher power, or your whatever you believe in. I was doing a sound healing one time, and a woman had gotten a headache, a migraine, because the sound had affected her. And from that, I was brought to learning Reiki. And I don't know if you know what Reiki is, but it's, divine healing energy that the Reiki practitioner channels through their crown chakra, through their heart chakra, out their hands. And I ended up studying Reiki and becoming a Reiki master over several years' time, and started doing hands-on healings. And then I went on to learn all different kinds of energy healing modalities, because when I realized the release, that how much your body physically holds from the grief. And I like that you said grief, because when you go through the ending of a relationship. It doesn't have to be divorce. It can be any relationship, a friendship too. You know, a lot of times when, you know, if you lose a friend for one reason or another, that is like a death. And that is kind of what divorce or the ending of a relationship is. It's grief. And you actually go through the stages of grief as if it was a death. And that's really what I was going through when my husband left. I was going through, you know, the stages of like death, of grief that someone experiences when they lose a loved one who really does die. So having the energy healing and the Reiki and the sound healing and integrated energy, I learned something else called pranic healing. I studied this for years, and I was kind of led to one thing after another. And, you know, you have your chakras and your body just holds all of these things. And there's lots of different studies on Reiki, and they're now using it in hospitals with cancer patients. And it's really starting to gain a lot of momentum in the community for these alternative, what I call alternative healing modalities. I really encourage women to try it, but it's not the only thing that you should be doing. As you were saying, you were trying many different things to heal. And I think going to therapy and a counselor, doing intentions, doing that deep, soulful, what are my belief systems? Where do these belief systems come from? Do they come from the belief systems of my parents? Do they come from my friends, how I was raised? Really, when you go through what I like to call the dark night of the soul, when you have something that rattles you to your core, you need to figure out how you're going to function. How am I going to get up the next day and make sure my daughter brushes her teeth and eats her breakfast and pay my bills and work. At the time I was working full-time job, and I had a 2-hour commute each way. I would listen to audiobooks, spiritual teachers, and I would practice what they were teaching. Like I said earlier, I didn't have a roadmap on the steps that I needed to take to feel better. And so that's really where I feel I can help women, because many times when we are transitioning to what I believe is our true authentic self, right? We need to look at our true authentic self and remember who we are and transition back to that. There's a defined path that we can take to get there. It is some effort, but it's truly worth it, because when you learn to love yourself and you learn to remember who you are, you're going to then invite what's really meant for you into your life, and creating that space to heal and giving yourself time to heal. That's all part of it.
Oh my gosh. See, our stories are very much similar when you're just kind of like, right, like, how are you going to, you need to make sure that you're right with yourself, because you have a child that needs you. Like, I knew from the second that I realized, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a single parent. I was thinking like, okay, I need to make sure that my son, especially as little as he was, oh my gosh, he's in a very prime developing stage right now. He's learning to talk. He's learning to do some little things to be independent. I was scared. I'm like, how am I going to accomplish this? And then it made it even harder because my son's father's job requires him to be out of state. So it's not like we even had an opportunity to do like a co-parenting situation where he gets him every other weekend, or, you know, there was nothing like that. It was, at the moment, it's very much like, oh, we'll see you a couple times a year, maybe, you know, a couple days here, a week there. So truly, I am the sole caregiver for this child. And I just knew, and I'm so thankful that I've always been the type that wants to be prepared for everything. I'm very much like on it. I'm like, okay, enough of this. I had my grieving period. I need to make sure that I'm okay, so my son doesn't feel that energy. I was so scared of like passing on anything to him, because another thing that, you know, when you talked about the cycle is repeating. And for me, my mom was a single mom. So my worst nightmare was becoming a single mom. And I was like, oh, great, here we go again. Now it's like things are like happening all over again. And I was just like, this is not the life that I envisioned for myself. I envisioned myself being happily married till I'm old and gray. You know, like I was very much hopeless romantic mentality. And so, but just what I've realized with my own journey is, because of that situation, not only did I find my inner strength, I found the self-love that we truly need to find and embody, is that I'm capable of so many things I never imagined. And it's leading me to even this podcast, like talking about my story, because it's not easy to share your story that was once so painful, and you know you're on the right path of healing when you're able to talk about it and you don't get so overwhelmed. You don't break down in tears. That was kind of like what I was following along with myself. I'm like, am I able to talk about this without bursting up crying? No? Okay, I'm still healing.
Yeah. One of the things that I would say too is that one of the things you said about control, right? I want to control things. I want to make sure that I'm not bringing that energy to my child. I was like that too. I mean, I was angry at him. I was angry. I was so angry at him. And I remember like not being able to control my emotions because I was just so angry and really was struggling with, not saying, mean things about him. And I tried not to do it in front of my daughter, and she was young, so she didn't totally understand because she was little, but your children do pick up on that negative energy. And it was a long time for me to get over that. It took a couple of years. But what I would say is you need to not be fearful. One of the things I think we often do is we go into this fear mode. Oh my gosh, what is going to happen? What if this happens? What if that happens? And we start to ruminate and have these fearful thoughts. What if, what if, what if? And I would say, be gentle with yourself when you go through that and breathe into the fear. And that's where meditation, again, I think just even if you don't want to meditate, just to breathe, recognize that you are angry, recognize that you're not reacting the way that you need to be. You need to breathe. And sometimes just taking, 5 or 6 deep inhale, exhale breaths can help if you're going into the anxiety or having the fear, which is so common, not just in relationships, but just any kind of disturbance that sets us where, on a path where we weren't expecting something to happen. So there's a lot of these techniques that you learn over time to help yourself, because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. You want to feel good about yourself, and you want to learn coping mechanisms to help yourself heal healthy. There was times in my life when I didn't heal so healthy, and I chose, maybe to have more wine than I should have had. And that didn't help me. That did not help me. And so you learn what doesn't work and what doesn't work for your body. And
it's so true. And just like how we're talking about with grief, like it does come in stages. And the first one is maybe anger. Like, I feel like for some people, the order kind of changes, but for me, it was like denial. I was like, there's no way. I was like, there's no way that this is actually happening. I'm like, maybe this is a phase. Maybe, this is just what he feels right now he needs to do for himself because he's on his own journey. And I'm thankful that we are in a much better place now. We co-parent great, and there's no drama, right? But first it was denial, and I was like, okay, we've been together for so long, like it'll be fine. Months pass, 6 months pass, and I'm like, okay, this is real. Like there's, no one's changing their mind, or he's not changing his mind. And then anger. And I just remember like I have memories of driving to my therapist's office, just already feeling it before I'm even talking to her, because I'm just like, oh gosh, I'm about to like tell her and unleash like all these feelings I have towards him for why he did this to our family. A lot of the things I would say to myself is why was like, how could this have happened? And then you kind of go back in time. You're like, could I have done things differently? Was there something that I was doing? And something that you mentioned earlier that really popped out to me was, the self-worth and the self-love, because I didn't really love myself at that time. Honestly, like I remember, especially because our lifestyle that we had was very much focused on his career. And so the focus was so much on there that I wasn't really doing my own work and like following my own path. And then especially once you become a mom, all of a sudden now it's all about the child. And finding that balance, especially as a new mom, is a struggle, because you're trying to make sure your partner's good, your child is good, your pets are good, and then you come last. So I always had this tendency of putting everyone else first before myself. And then now, years.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then you realize like, wow, it is so backwards. That is not the way you're supposed to do things.
Yeah. You become depleted, right? And then you can't give to others. And I think, as women, we really do that a lot. We don't always put ourselves first. A lot of times you were talking about the stages of the grief and being in denial. And we also make excuses for people. right? We make excuses. Oh, well, they just did this, or, oh, well, this person just did that. And we have red flags that appear in our life.
Yep.
And those red flags will appear and appear and appear, and they try to get our attention, and we find ourselves making excuses and, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. And you're right. You end up putting yourself last. You end up making decisions that do not honor you.
Right.
And, that is where ultimately we end up, things come crashing down, and we end up experiencing things that, hopefully we don't want to experience again. But, that's when it comes through. And so the red flags, I think, is something that we sometimes kind of brush under the table. The ability to, when you're in the emotion, right? We get angry, right? So when you get to the next stage and you're angry or you're crying or whatever, I really encourage my clients to feel that emotion. I think sometimes too, when we're healing, we don't want to feel the pain. We don't want to feel the pain. We don't want to feel lousy. So we push it down, or we ignore it, or we say, oh, I'm not going to deal with that right now. But if you don't allow yourself to experience and feel the emotion, it ends up prolonging the healing, and you can't release what you really need to release. And that's where alternative healing modalities like Reiki or sound healing or meditation, they can really help in allowing you to dig deep and feel that emotion, because that's really where the healing comes, when we're able to release. And that's hard. That's a hard thing to do.
Absolutely. And that's why the one thing I'm so grateful for is that throughout my journey, I did find that self-love. And honestly, shortly after I really started to own that and really prove that to myself, so many doors opened up. All of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, the floodgates have opened. Now it's like all of these, new people that have come into my life, and great people, even like the opportunities that came my way. I was just like, wow, once you're really aligned with where you're supposed to be, everything is beautiful. You're just like, I wish I I always, so that's why ever since my healing journey begun and even till present day, I have no regrets. I definitely think that experience and that relationship and really understanding, there's people in your life that you do need to encounter. There's people in your life that'll either be part of your life for the rest of your time, or they're a lesson. And so that's how I take things. I just put it out into the universe. I'm like, whoever is meant to be in my space, I welcome them. If they're not meant to be here, then I release them. I literally just surrender, because I know the more you force something and if you're not getting the results, that's when the resistance happens. That's when, things are just chaotic and it just doesn't pan out. So I've really started to learn that just allowing things to come and go as they please, whether they serve their purpose or not, that's just the way I go about it now, honestly.
I absolutely love what you are saying. I love it, Shane. That is so amazing that you're able to do it. One of the things that I think also we struggle with as women too, is we put up that resistance, or we want to control. We want it to happen the way we think it's going to happen. And we don't surrender, right? Another word you said that is a big one is the ability to surrender whatever your higher power is that you believe in, that this person's going to be brought into your life for a reason. And that's how we grow. That's how we grow. I was able to forgive my daughter's father, and him and I actually have done a very good job. I'm very proud of us that we were able to co-parent. My daughter is 13 now, and she's very well-rounded. And him and I have found our cadence in co-parenting. And you can get there. And it's
right.
The interesting thing is that I was never going to change him. And I don't know that I think he's truly changed. He never apologized for what happened. And that's okay, because it made me who I am. And I was able to really look at myself, and I was really able to heal in my soul. I do believe that sharing my story will be able to help other women. And so many women are so afraid for other women to judge them. And I think that was something that I was worried about too when I was going through my healing process and trying to forgive him, was what are other women going to think of me that my husband left me for another woman? What are they going to judge me? What are they going to say? And I think that as women, women can be harsh. One of the things that I strive for is to give women the ability to heal in a non-judgmental way, because we're never perfect and we're not always going to say the right thing or react the way that we want to react. And healing can be messy. And having a non-judgmental environment to heal is very, very therapeutic. It definitely starts within you. So I love your story too, Shane, because I so resonate with it. Look at you now, and that's kind of how I am. I mean, I have grown to, have my own business now with Heart Vibe Global and my Shift Your Vibe transformation to authentic self programs. And I never thought that I would, be doing this. I come from a business background. I was in the business world and leading global teams, and nobody knew really that this was happening behind the scenes. My close coworkers did. And, you have to try to hold it together. But, the more I started to open up about my story, I found that other women who were also in business and who also had been going secretly through a divorce, or maybe they weren't ready for divorce, but they were going through challenging times. Everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that. And you can heal, and you're not 100% always healed, but that's okay. You go through the process. Again, like I was saying to you earlier, it's like an onion, right? You heal a layer, peel another one, heal a layer, peel another one.
And I mean, it's funny because, your background was in business and you were working with, different brands and corporations. But at the end of the day, this work feels fulfilling for you, right? Like now you feel you're really doing something that you love, and you know that if you can even help one person, you've done enough.
Yes, absolutely. I did not think that I was going to go down a healing route to help other women heal and teach them the path and the roadmap items for them to be able to go step by step, because it is a step-by-step process. Right. I didn't think that was going to be my purpose, but I found my purpose, and it feels good as people hear us talking that they know they have a support system. Absolutely. That they're not alone.
Because it can feel very isolating. That is for sure. Like I felt like there was no one that could understand what I was going through. And it was really tough. I did spend a lot of time at home. This was before COVID, of course. And I was like, I don't really want to go anywhere. And I'm a very extroverted person. So when you are on the opposite end of the spectrum, you're like, something's really wrong. Like if you don't even want to do the basic things of just, going and sitting at a coffee shop, I just felt like not that I felt like ashamed, but I almost felt like a failure. I was just kind of like, God, like what happened? Like 1 second I was like a happy wife and a new mom and just like loving this new chapter. And then boom, it was gone just like that. I mean, sometimes, like I said, like these situations, they lead us down paths we never thought, but we're happy. We have great businesses. We have great support system. And at the end of the day, as long as the kids are happy and the co-parenting relationship is in a good place, I think we've done great work there. So that's beautiful.
And I think it's important to know that it's not always going to turn out maybe the way that we envisioned it. I just want to go back to something that I started when we started our conversation, is focus on what it is that you want. And you need to focus on and talk about it, write it down, and you have to get yourself to a point where you really believe it. And that doesn't happen overnight. If you really do focus on and believe that things will turn out the way that they're supposed to be, and not try to control it, because a lot of times we put up resistance when we want it to happen the way that we want it to happen and not the way it's just supposed to happen. I think you kind of said that earlier when you're saying, now I just let things flow and I just kind of go with the flow. And that's something that I learned too over time, but it doesn't always start that way. And it's definitely a process.
Like we say, it's a work in progress. And I love that you said that earlier, that we're imperfectly perfect. So
you're perfectly imperfect.
Perfect. I'm already practicing myself, but but oh my gosh, I just love this. And I know, your online community, I'm sure it feels like a very good, like tribe, like where you feel like you're accepted, people understand you, and there's a good support there. So I love that. Yeah. Tell us where people can find you and connect with you online.
Yeah, sure. So right now I'm on Instagram at Ms. Natalie Alesi, MSNATALIE ALESI. And you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Shift Your Vibe Now. And my website is nataliealesi.com. And I have a free ebook that you can download if you're interested. I'll be releasing my Shift Your Vibe Transformation to Your Authentic Self program in September. It's already gone through a couple of revisions, but I'll be releasing it formally to the public. So if you're interested, there is a wait list that you can get on and be the first to be notified. So I'm really excited to connect with women who feel that my story resonates with them and that I can help them. And if you're one of those women, I'm here for you.
That's me. I'm one of those women. So I will be there. Yeah. But oh my gosh, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today. And I did not realize how much our stories were so so aligned in a way. I was like, oh my gosh, I had no clue. But I love it. And just like all of our other guests that have been on the show and future ones, Natalie will be in our podcast insiders group, so you can connect with her directly through there and just hang out, come say hi. And it's a way for all of us to feel like we have our own community from this podcast. So thank you all again for listening today, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank you.